Hello, I'm Morris Llewellyn. Last week we asked you questions about buildings and locations in Red Deer. I'm back with the answers. The answer is Red Deer's Jubilee City Hall. And the answer is the Hudson Bay store, and with 5 stories added to it, it is now the Millennium Center. The answer is the Salvation Army Citadel, and this building used to sit where the provincial building does now. And the answer is the Imperial Bank. This building was replaced with the Bunn building. The answer is the Gates Cornett Drug and Bookstore. This building was torn down to make the site for the new Bank of Montreal that exists today. The answer is the Parsons Clinic, and that clinic closed after 109 years in 2012. The answer is the Royal Bank. This building came down in 1971, and the new Royal Bank building opened on this site. And here are the questions for next week.
Hello, I'm Michael Daw, and I'm here this week as part of the Great Red Deer Trivia Challenge. And the topic for this week is grain elevators, because one thing that was a landmark of just about every prairie community across Western Canada were the grain elevators, or as they sometimes were referred to as the Prairie Sentinels. But whereas one time we had 1,800 of them across the province of Alberta, now there's just a handful as they have become a thing of the past. In the city of Red Deer, elevators were a major part of our history, but there's not a single grain elevator still standing in Red Deer today. Grain elevators were such prominent landmarks of many prairie communities. You could almost say they were the temples of the agricultural economy. This is a picture of a seed mill in Red Deer, which also had deep religious roots to it. Do you know where it was located and what was its name? Traditionally, Red Deer's elevator row was north of the CPR station, but in the 1950s and early 1960s, we created a second elevator row in Red Deer, which supplemented and in some cases replaced the old elevators. Do you know where the second elevator row was located? And do you know the name of this particular elevator, which was one of the first ones to be built in that second elevator row? One thing that a lot of people in Red Deer have forgotten is that we used to have not one, but 2 rail yards in the downtown area. One was on the west end of Ross Street, and that was the CPR station, but we also had a Canadian National Railroad station and a grain elevator next to it. And this is a picture of that particular grain elevator. Do you know where this grain elevator was located and where the old CNR station was? Not all the grain elevators and seed mills were actually located on a main rail line. In North Red Deer, for many years, we had the Red Deer Seed and Grain Company that was located on a branch of one of the railroads, but not directly on it. Do you know where this seed company elevator was located in North Red Deer and what happened to it? The First World War were terrible years, as so many young men of the community went off to fight in the war. But ironically, it was boom years for the prairie farmers, as there was an enormous demand for foodstuffs to support the war effort, things like grains, horses, cattle, and so on. And with the boom on, there was a big demand to start building elevators. This particular elevator was built in 1917, much bigger than any previous elevator Red Deer had, and it was built very close to the train station to handle all the grain that was now being shipped to Eastern Canada and then to overseas. The question for today is, do you recognize this elevator? Where exactly was it located? And what was the name of the company that built it? This is a photograph of one of the oldest grain elevators in Red Deer. It was originally built back in 1907 when Red Deer was less than 1,000 people. It was a major landmark along Gates Avenue, but was finally demolished in the early 1960s when the city was constructing a new truck route and a redevelopment of that part of the city of Red Deer. But the question would be, what was the names, because it had two of them, of this particular grain elevator?